Hi! This video is the Gender Cake Biogender video. This is part of a series, it's the third one, so if you haven't seen the Gender Cake Overview and the Gender Cake Biological Sex video, please check out those first so that you're not confused. Now, onward! So, the first question is, why is the prefix bio included in this tier, right? We are used to seeing the word biological in biological. But we're not really used to seeing biogender. And there are gonna be out there who say that this doesn't make any sense because gender is purely social. It is completely socialized, it is purely a social construct, and that there is no scientific, or rather, there is no medical basis for it at all, and so we don't really need the prefix bio. And although I can understand why folks would say that, I'm respectfully going to have to disagree, and here is why. There are certain behaviors that human beings take part in that humans are statistically significantly more likely to engage in based on whatever their biological sex is. So there are certain behaviors that I, a biological female, am more likely to engage in because I am a biological female rather than a biological male, and vice versa. There are certain behaviors that biological males are more likely to engage in specifically because they are biological males. Now, are there outliers? Of course there are outliers. There are going to be outliers in every statistic, right? But it's important for us to remember that an exception to the rule does not negate the rule. An exception to the rule does not mean the rule isn't real. And that's what we're going to focus on today, okay? Now, you might want an in-depth conversation about what all of those behaviors are, and if you want a video about that, I could totally make one, but we are not going to be getting super in-depth with it today. I'll just give you a brief synopsis. So the hypothesis was, well, because gender is purely a social construct, if we raise little boys and little girls as similarly as possible, then when they get older, they'll make pretty similar choices, right? And that absolutely stands to reason as a hypothesis that you would want to study if that is the conclusion that you've come to just from your own life experiences, right? So that's what was done over many years in multiple cultures. And these tests are called the Big Five. And what you would think is the more egalitarian, the more equal little boys and little girls are raised up as children, the more similar they will be when they become adults. That's what you would think, right? But actually that's backwards. What happened in reality is that little boys and little girls grew up to be people who had vastly different interests and made vastly different choices. And that could be traced back to their biological sex. And if you would like to look more into it, you can look up the Big Five. I, however, am not going to be talking about that at length today. You can let me know in the comments if you want a more in-depth video, and we'll go through the studies and we'll talk about it in great depth. But I'm saying that to let you all know that biogender, I called it biogender because there is a biological aspect to behavior. Again, there are always going to be outliers. I, in fact, am one of them. I am one of the outliers, okay? I'm very gender non-conforming in many, 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 many different ways. And a couple of them are biological. But I am not going to say that I've opted out of this tier. Again, there is a tier for opting out, and it's the next one up, but that's not the one we're talking about in this video, okay? So when I say that biogender is physical plus biobehavioral, what I mean is physical, meaning gametes, ovum or sperm, okay? That's what physical means in this case. Physical, and then biobehavioral is there are certain behaviors that do have a biological component to them, okay? And like I said, you all can let me know if you want a more in-depth conversation, discussion about what those behaviors are and what the studies found and all that good stuff. So, something that I said in the last video, and I want to highlight again in this one, these two tiers are not the world's business, okay? The reason why I'm using the prefix bio is because I want that to be a symbol or a signal that these are scientific and medical conversations, which means there are three categories, three situations in which this would be important information to disclose. And those situations are scientific studies, physical intimacy, and medical questions. If that is not the scenario that you're in, please feel free to let people know that this is none of their business. But just because a piece of information is nobody's business doesn't make it not real. And that is important to note. We do need this tier. And I know that there are people who are like, well, why don't we just get rid of the gender tier, the biogender tier? We don't really need that. We can just substitute it with gender identity. Okay, that's what a lot of the political left says, and then a lot of the political right is the opposite, and they're like, we can get rid of the gender identity tier, we don't need that, and we can just have the biogender tier. But I see the nuance in all the situations, and I am autistic and I have ADHD, but the autism lends me very good pattern recognition skills, and I've been pissing everybody off my whole life by seeing the nuance in every situation. So I kind of was able to zoom out and be like, wait a minute, I see the value in both the biogender part of this cake and I see the value in the gender identity part of this cake. I feel like we can respect everyone. I feel like we don't have to throw any of these ideas in the trash. And for some reason, and that makes everybody mad. So, I mean, that's probably a good enough reason to at least hear me out, right? Is the fact that I make everybody mad. If I make the political right and the political left upset with me for my opinions, that's a good sign that maybe I have something valuable to say, even if you don't end up agreeing with me. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, biological sex is the first tier. That's the video that we went over last time. So if you want a more in-depth understanding of what this bottom tier means, please check out that video. But basically, the biogender tier is just asking, biogender, are you a man or a woman? Because there's only two. There's two biogenders. Yes, it does get more complicated than that in a different tier of the cake. So that is where we get this information from, okay? So to figure out if you are a man or a woman, you are essentially answering the question that is asked in the tier below. If your reproductive system were properly functioning, would you make ovum or would you make sperm? And if your reproductive system is properly functioning, do you make ovum or do you make sperm? Okay? And if you are both, it means that you can produce a healthy offspring with both the egg and the sperm that your body creates. So, whoops. Okay, so we have now checked off biogender. Let me know if you have any questions, but please hold off on your questions until I get to the top tier and this whole series is done, because it's very possible that your question may have been answered in a different video that I haven't posted yet, because I'm going in order. And this is video 3 out of 6. And here's just a bigger depiction of what I have just shown you, okay? So that clears us up for biogender. Again, there is a very important reason why this cake is split up by these red lines, all right? The physical is split from the emotional, which is split from the compatibility filter for a very important reason. The fact that it's physical means that these conversations are not for the general public, unless you want them to be. But I do think that it's okay to let people know that certain things are none of their business, you know what I mean? Except for those 3 situations that we discussed earlier. Scientific studies, physical intimacy with other people, and medical conversations. All right, the next tier of this cake is going to be gender identity. The one I know you guys have all been waiting for is the opt-out one. And I'm really excited about that. So please stick around because I will be posting that video very soon. And I look forward to seeing how you all choose to engage with the video. Bye.